Plumes of colourful smoke hang in the skies above Abu Dhabi. Tanks and armoured vehicles are on the parade ground in front of the exhibition centre, and naval vessels are moored on the nearby waters. It can only be IDEX, the defence exhibition, is in town. You're listening to the Business Extra podcast coming from the National in Abu Dhabi. I'm Mustafa Alrawi, Assistant Editor-in-Chief. With me is my co-host, the National's future editor, Kelsey Warner. Hi, Kelsey.
Hi, Mustafa.
So, as I mentioned, coming up is quite an important exhibition and conference, not just for the UAE, but the region as well. It's the IDEX Defense Exhibition. It also incorporates NAVDEX, which is, as the name would suggest, the naval exhibition. It's perhaps the first international scale exhibition and conference being held here since the pandemic began. So it has sort of wide-ranging implications, not just for the health of defense, but also for the events industry itself.
Right. And as you vividly described, things flying in, swimming in, rolling in. And at the curtain raiser event yesterday, Major General Staff Pilot Faris Khalaf Al-Mazrui said, "This does mark a recovery for Abu Dhabi." So it is an exciting week on, I think, multiple fronts, and going back into an in-person event this week, I'm excited.
Well, just to explain, the plumes of colourful smoke that I mentioned at the top of this episode refers to the Al Forsan acrobatic team. It's sort of these jets that do these sort of wonderful formations in the skies, and they've been practicing this week ahead of IDEX. So they tend to do several runs. So from our vantage point in our studio, we generally get to see them taking off and landing and doing a few of those maneuvers. So it's sort of a visible sign that something is going on. Obviously, there's an expectation of visitors, of large delegations from around the world coming in. But to kind of give us more, the National's business correspondent, Deena Kamel, is with us. Hi, Deena.
Hi, Mustafa. Hi, Kelsey. Thank you for having me on today.
So, Deena, you've covered IDEX before many times in your long career as a journalist, and obviously with the National as well. Can you give us a bit of colour as to how this IDEX is shaping up, given the, dare I say, extraordinary circumstances in which we're all living at the moment?
Absolutely. I mean, on any given edition, IDEX is one of the most exciting events to come to town. It is one that is closely watched by the global defense industry, and it is absolutely the biggest defense exhibition in the Middle East. So for this event of this magnitude and of this importance to go ahead during the pandemic, that's really a big deal for the sector. And it is a sign of confidence that a lot of international exhibitors are flying in, be here and to showcase their various technologies. So we're talking about 900 exhibitors are going to be coming from about 60 countries all over the world to take part in this year's edition. So IDEX happens once every 2 years, and there's going to be, a lot of excitement around the kind of deals that could be made during the pandemic. So this is definitely an opportunity for companies to revive deal making, revive businesses, and actually to take the opportunity to meet in person, which is something that has happened only rarely over the past year.
Something we no longer take for granted. Can you give me a sense of the scope or scale of the contracts we should be looking out for, and who are the big players to be watching?
Sure. So the preview that has come out of IDEX this year, we're talking about an outlook for deals this year that's going to be similar to the last edition, which took place in 2019. And so 2 years ago, the UAE had awarded contracts of about 20.5 billion dirhams. So we're talking about something in the vicinity of $5.5 billion worth of deals just from the UAE alone as the host country of IDEX. So this year should be within a similar context, give or take, of that amount. And it's also going to be an edition that's marked with new participants coming into the exhibition this year. So we're talking about Portugal, Luxembourg, Azerbaijan, and the ratio, if you will, of companies that are going to be exhibiting this year. We have 84% of the exhibitors will be coming in from abroad, and 16% are UAE-based companies, which is a very important segment, given that the UAE is trying to develop and build its military capabilities here.
Deena, certainly. I mean, something I'll be watching out for always is what Edge is up to. Edge being the big military conglomerate announced back in 2019 that brought 25 subsidiaries under one roof here in the UAE. And a year ago at UMEX, which is sort of a sister conference to IDEX, it's unmanned system technologies, Edge announced that they would be manufacturing the first locally made drone in the UAE. And so this year, I'll definitely be looking out for what they have in terms of announcements around locally manufactured autonomous weapons, autonomous vehicle systems, autonomous navigation. I'm expecting a few announcements on those fronts. And I think Edge, to your point, major priority is localization. The word of the week will be localization.
Yeah, 100%. And we've already seen that, speaking of Edge, we've already seen this happening already since yesterday. Edge announcing, even before IDEX starts, that they're signed an agreement with a couple of state-owned Ukrainian defense companies, basically where they're going to agree to exchange and develop advanced technology and cooperate on that front. And hopefully that cooperation going forward is going to result in investments of more than $1 billion. So that focus on local companies seeking out a transfer of knowledge and a transfer of technology is definitely at the forefront and at the top of the agenda and has already started.
And then something too to also be thinking about when they think, speaking about knowledge transfer around AI and technology systems, this idea of security will be top of mind. And I think there's going to be, in fact, I know there's going to be a lot of public conversations to be had around this idea of cybersecurity and transfer of assets and resources as it relates to intellectual property. How do we keep our systems safe and secure when we're in these alliances and these sharing deals? And that's a really interesting emerging dynamic within the industry is how do we do this? How do we do this safely and at scale?
To your point on the use of advanced technology in military warfare, there's definitely this year a focus from Gulf buyers on specific aspects of that. So we're talking about drones, we're talking about counter UAV systems. We're talking about technologies that are able to provide an integration of data and images and communication systems during combat situations that give better capabilities to the command and control centers during challenging situations. So definitely we're seeing Gulf buyers putting that at the forefront and the top of their agenda. And those are among really the equipment that should be most in demand.
I'll just pick up on the wider issues going on related to defense. NATO's Secretary General this week, Jens Stoltenberg, he said a couple of fascinating points ahead of a defense ministers meeting. One is, which maybe isn't so surprising in normal circumstances, which is he said that NATO members should increase spending, particularly on deterrence, and talked about various areas such as Iraq and Afghanistan where NATO has pressing engagements. But given that there has been a pandemic and so much of national spending is going to healthcare, I guess everybody's got to get out and bang the drum a little bit for their industry, and one of them being defense. So I thought that was fascinating that he's really pushing that message. But then secondly, which didn't even occur to me, is that he also said that members have got to consider making their own militaries carbon neutral, which I didn't even is something that is very much tied into technology, tied into sort of the new systems that are coming through. I'll be very interested to know if down at IDEX this week there is an element of sort of making the weapons of tomorrow, if you like, or the systems of tomorrow. They're not always just weapons, but systems that are more in tune with some of the wider problems we're trying to tackle, such as climate change.
This has been one of the focus areas for aerospace companies, many of which also have defense arms. So I would not be surprised if that was also their direction in the defense side of their businesses. And of course, there's a lot of added external pressure from various environmental groups on businesses of being mindful of their carbon footprint. To your point on budgets and spending on defense during the pandemic, this is very interesting because some of the industry experts and analysts that I've talked to during the course of this week have said the outlook in general for the Gulf and Middle East region is one of stable defense spending, just as governments are trying to balance various important priorities. On one hand, the social and healthcare expenditure and the vaccination campaigns on one hand, and then on the other, also the ever important spend on defense and military capabilities and security. This is a time of careful assessment and balance of those two priorities, while at the same time also ensuring that part of the contracts that they spend on and part of the contracts that they award are also given to their own local military companies. And that, of course, goes back to part of the Gulf's wider push for economic diversification, is to build up strong and local military production bases here.
I mean, to the greening aspect of the defense industry, I will say they do pioneer technologies, and autonomy inherently, we associate that actually with being more energy efficient than legacy transport systems. So I'm by no means saying that this is a magic bullet for the greening of this industry, but defense did give us the internet, and defense is certainly leading the way on autonomous systems and, driverless technologies. And they're mostly, electrified systems. They don't rely on fossil fuels to run just by their nature. So the innovation is being led by the defense industry in a lot of ways. They're not laggards by any means, but yeah, I think there's certainly other things to be looking for in that area. But yeah, autonomy, green, we'll be looking out for it.
And perhaps one final area worth mentioning is cybersecurity. Very much a topic of discussion these days. We had some large attacks last year that have made it clear that that defenses could be better worldwide. But in terms of sort of the battlefield, if you like, there was a very interesting not announcement, but interesting tidbit from the UK. Their armed forces apparently hacked ISIS drones on the battlefield to bring them down, and it makes me think that there is a yin and yang to this, where you're going to develop drones, but you have to make sure that they are pretty robust and aren't hackable, but at the same time you want to have the tools to be able to nullify an enemy like ISIS, which is also trying to use technology to its advantage on the battlefield.
Absolutely. It's what Edge calls hybrid warfare.
With the kind of increasing geopolitical tensions between various regions, whether in the West, China, Russia, that are driving their spending growth in 2021 and their defense spending, these countries are putting a bigger focus on cyber risks, on electronic warfare, hypersonics, and even, since we are venturing into that area, into space capabilities. So definitely this is going to be something important to watch out for. And it is one of the key themes that are going to be addressed at the International Defense Conference happening on Saturday, just before IDEX. There's an entire segment that will be looking at that. So that indicates that this is an important topic for discussion between the industry players that will be convening here in Abu Dhabi.
Deena Kamel, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Kelsey Warner, thanks to you also.
Thank you.
And thanks to you all for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do subscribe or leave a review. All that remains to thank our production team, Arthur Edison and Aisha Khan, and join us again next time.